Okay, thank you. Was it start? Okay. All right. Thank you all. I think people will keep joining us meanwhile. Let's start the process, and it's an honor actually to kind of stand before all of you today, and that too on a day which is considered as one of the crucial pillars of our society, of a country. And when we talk about Constitution of India, when we talk about access to justice, particularly in context of the person who was we kind of call him the person who has drafted the Constitution. He was the president of the drafting committee. He was the head of the drafting committee, chairman of the drafting committee. But the way he has envisioned it was like brilliant. And of course, the architect of the Indian Constitution himself was not just a jurist, not just a politician, not just someone who only worked upon the caste and social justice specifically, but also someone who had extensively worked on the gender justice aspect also. And of course, a visionary who understood that true democracy, which can only flourish when every citizen has how should I say, has equal rights, has equal opportunities, in terms of equity and all. And the kind of tireless efforts which he had put in drafting the Constitution, which laid the foundation for a just and inclusive society altogether. And of course, the basic principles which he had tried to put in the first page itself, which were like equality, liberty, fraternity. And they were not even only ideas, but they are the present day lived reality if we look into that aspect itself. And आप अगर देखेंगे भारत का संविधान, जिसे अक्सर लोकतंत्र का एक प्रतीक माना जाता है, एक अंबेडकर को एक दृष्टिकोण के माध्यम से उसको एक प्रतीक देखा गया, जहां सभी नागरिकों को जाति के आधार पर, पंथ के आधार पर, लिंग के आधार पर, धर्म के आधार पर परवाह किए बिना मौलिक अधिकारों की गारंटी देता है। और जितनी खूबसूरती से अनुच्छेद 14 और अनुच्छेद 15 लिखा गया है, और जिस हिसाब से अनुच्छेद 17 और अनुच्छेद 21 में एक स्पष्ट रूप से न्याय के अधिकार की बात की गई है और बताया गया है कि नहीं, ये न्याय सिर्फ एक समुदाय तक सीमित नहीं है, ये न्याय हर समुदाय तक आना चाहिए है। उसी के आधार पे जो आज कानून बन रहे हैं हमारे साथ में, वो कहीं ना कहीं हमें एक ताकत दे रहे हैं। और ये ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ एक सरकार के पास में नहीं, बल्कि विभिन्न राज्यों में विभिन्न निकायों की शक्ति और जिम्मेदारियों को कुछ हद तक हर स्तर पे रेखांकित करने की कोशिश करता है। और ये कुछ हद तक सामाजिक न्याय के कुछ सिद्धांतों को भी बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से स्थापित करता है। तो so let's move forward with the whole panel discussion, and we have a few very good panelists with us. So I would like to introduce you with Mr. Arvind. Mr. Arvind is here. He's a professor, he's a lawyer, he's a researcher, and he's presently also a visiting professor for the Azim Premji University specifically. And of course, if we kind of want to know him more, so he's also co-editor of the book, which is Law Like Love, which is the queer perspective on law, and co-author of Breathing Life into the Constitution and Human Rights, Lawyering in India, and extensively has researched and worked upon caste, Ambedkar, and Constitution. So I would like to request Arvind, if you want to pitch in, and we can start the context building of the session, and let's kind of start with this. Thank you, Arvind. Thank you.
Thanks, Naveen, for that warm and generous, really, introduction. And it's really a privilege to be here on this day to be thinking about Babasaheb Ambedkar's contribution. And which is the 133rd or the 134th birth anniversary. 133rd or 134th? Yeah. So I think it's a difficult to really talk about his contribution. It's very vast, and Professor Bakshi puts it somewhere. He says that the Babasaheb's contribution is what he says, oceanic. Each time you go to his corpus or his work, you'll find something new, some new thought, some new way of looking at things, something which is truly remarkable. And for me, what is remarkable, or what is really shocking in some ways, is when we were students at the National Law School, Bangalore, right? We never, ever read anything by Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Nothing. We didn't read Annihilation of Caste. We didn't read the opening speech in the Constituent Assembly introducing the draft constitution. And we didn't read the closing speech when the constitution was finally presented before the Constituent Assembly. And to me, that was a tragedy. It was a tragedy because the depth of understanding which comes to reading Baba Saheb's work is not to be underestimated for any person who wants to understand either the Indian Constitution or to understand, in a broader sense, the notion of democracy in the Indian context. Each of these concepts, right? And this is something we'll get to Naveen in a little while, which is I want to look more specifically at Baba Saheb's contribution to the Indian Constitution. And I think the contributions to the Indian Constitution to rethinking notions. One is the notion of equality, right? The graded inequality is a very different way of looking at the notion of equality. The notion of dignity, the notion of fraternity, the notion of constitutional morality, and the notion of democracy. These are the 5 notions I want to look at. But I think before that, actually, before getting to that, since you set the context so clearly, I thought of perhaps highlighting again, because to indicate again, right? I mean, Dr. Ambedkar was clearly a lawyer and clearly had a great contribution to the making and drafting of the Indian Constitution. But again, as I said, his contribution was oceanic. And the many dimensions of his contribution which are there, which we also have to understand the making of the Indian Constitution itself. And on that point, perhaps just one point again, is that Professor Bakshi again puts it very well. He says, at that moment in time, in the 1990s, he says Indian social science has disarticulated Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar by studious silence, right? And you go back to Dr. Ambedkar's work, go back to who are the Shudras, who are the untouchables. The point he makes again and again is that whatever work I'm putting out, it is not responded to by any person. The mean tricks of what he calls the Brahminical attitude is you ignore, right? And you silence by ignoring my contribution of my thinking about various dimensions of Indian democracy in Indian society. But the point I want to get to, actually, maybe this will be useful for all of us as well, is I want to just start by saying, I mean, this is the first part, start by saying there are at least 4 Ambedkars we need to think of. Dr. Bakshi highlights 7 Ambedkars. I'll speak of 4 Ambedkars. Right? One is, I think the starting point, at least for me, the way I look at it, is Ambedkar the reader. Right? Very, very important. You go back to, again, a very beautiful book. Those of you who haven't read it, please read it. It's a book by Salim Yusufji called, I think, The Intimate Ambedkar or The Personal Ambedkar. I forget the exact name. But the point he's making is people's reminiscences of Baba Saheb at that moment in time. And what is interesting is we can all have reminiscences about each of us, right? What is interesting is there's one golden thread which runs through all the reminiscences. What is the golden thread that runs through all of them? Is everybody comments on Baba Saheb's love of literature and reading. One person says 3 books he loved were Far from the Madding Crowd, Tolstoy, and a book by Thomas Hardy, and a book by La Mirable by Victor Hugo. Another person says, I left Baba Saheb in the night before going to sleep. And when I went in the morning, there's one book laid upon his chest and a couple of books on the table next to him, right? And another person says, what he told me? He said, you should spend 10% of your income buying books, right? So books are very central, very, very central to imagining Dr. Ambedkar. Again, if you look at the Constituent Assembly, look at the opening speech, look at the closing speech, you see the range of references there. And you'll say that this is absolutely incredible. It opens out your mind to ways of thinking, right, about the Indian Constitution, once you see the range of references there. One more point I'll make about why we should think of Dr. Ambedkar fundamentally and beginning as a reader. Of course, I mean, we all know, I mean, I'm sure all of you know that if you look at he boasted once, I think one of the few things he boasted about, of having the largest collection of books in India at that moment in time, right? Over 20,000 copies of books, etc. So obviously, reading was very central, very integral to who he was as a person. Why was reading so important to him? That's a question I want to ask. And I'll provide maybe one answer by pointing out to one piece which he wrote. It's a handwritten piece, which is there in, I think, volume 10 or volume 11. I'll tell you the exact details of his collected works. In a piece titled Frustration, right? A piece called Frustration. That's a very interesting question, right? What is frustration? Why do you feel frustration? And what is that mental state called frustration? And he puts it this way. I'm going to read out what he says. He talks about I'm quoting from him. He says, the untouchables have no Emersonian plus condition of body and mind, and they have nothing in the dull, drab, deadening past for a hope of a rise in the future to feed upon. This he attributes to the unpropitious social environment brought out of the Hindu social order, which is so deeply inimical to their progress. But the point I want to stress on is this, right? He says there were nothing in the dull, drab, deadening past for a hope of a rise in the future to feed upon. But if you read the rest of the note, I mentioned the word Emerson, read the rest of the note. There's an invocation of Emerson, who talks about a plus condition of body and mind. There's the invocation of Matthew Arnold, who talks about how life consists in effort to affirm one's essence. And the failure to affirm one's own essence is simply another name for frustration, right? If you can't affirm your essence, that's another name for frustration. And finally, he invokes the English romantic poet, Shelley, right? I'll read out to you the poem of Shelley he invokes. It's a very, very beautiful poem. The poem he invokes of Shelley is called To the Moon. And he thinks it describes the situation of the untouchables. It goes something like this. Pale for weariness of climbing heaven and gazing on earth, wandering companionless among the stars that have a different birth, right? So you can almost imagine what Baba Sahib is saying. He's saying that there's almost tired, pale for weariness of climbing heaven, climbing up to heaven, gazing on the earth, you're wandering companionless among the stars that have a different birth. So you get a sense of almost the loneliness of being up there, looking at the stars around you, and seeing that everybody has a different birth. Of course, I mean, the point which we'll all connect to is the star analogy and Rohit Vemula, right? Rohit Vemula's suicide note, and how he invokes the notion of being composed of stars as well. But the point again is you go further. You read a range of references Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar is making. He refers to Matthew Arnold, he refers to Emerson, he refers to Shelley, and refers to the Jews who, in a sense, find the way out of the situation of oppression they have. So the point really is this, right? When you have in your past, if it's a deadening and dry and dead past, you do not give up. You go to history, you go to literature, you find a way to think yourself outside the situation that you're in. So there's in the middle of this really, I think, very poignant, very beautiful, a very moving note called frustration. There is a way, he's pointing to a way forward. And the way forward gets back to what actually is the central thread, the way I understand Baba said, central thread, which is the question of reading. Reading is the way out of frustration. Reading is the way out of the situation you find yourself in. Reading is the way to cultivate what you can call an optimism of the intellect. Right? You have to find a way out in spite of in very, very difficult circumstances. So Ambedkar, the reader, the first point I want to make. But again, Naveen, how much time do I have? I don't want to hog up all the time. That's the reason
You have 3 to 4 more minutes.
Okay, wonderful. I'll just summarize all 3 points quickly now because
it's going on very powerful. It's a very powerful thing. So you please continue for 3 more minutes. Yeah. It's okay.
So the Ambedkar, the reader, was the first point I made. The second point I want to make is Ambedkar, the lawyer. Again, that's very, very important for the group we are with, Najar. You guys should really, all of you must read this essay by Rohit Dey on Ambedkar, the lawyer, right? And what to me was really a brilliant point in that entire thing is you think of being a lawyer, right? Being a lawyer relies a lot upon your family connections. That's what being a lawyer is about. When Gandhi goes to South Africa, how does he go to South Africa? He's not just going there waving his hands. He's going there because he has family connections, right? Which give him that particular job with the Muslim merchants in South Africa. Community connections, the way you're connected to a certain kind of society as well. Jinnah, right? Jinnah's work, again, relies on the fact that he has this community connections. Here is this man who is among the first educated persons in his community, maybe the first lawyers in his community, right? What connections can you rely on? Because again, if you read Savita Ambedkar's memory of Baba Sahib. There's a letter which he writes to her, in which he says, right? He says, it's not easy being a lawyer. He says, I struggle against two problems. One is the Brahmins, who ensure that I'll get no job, and the other is the Congress folks, who also don't want me to get a job as a lawyer, right? So there's a way in which, how do you become a lawyer and a successful lawyer when you don't have community connections? That's the challenge he faces. Again, I want to make this point only for one more point. The contradiction, right? People have pointed out too, I think you'll all realize this, that the only case Baba Sahib argued in the Supreme Court was a case which to us all seems kind of contradictory, right? He argued the case on behalf of the landlords, right? Asking for the for challenging the constitutionality of land reform laws. Everybody argues the contradiction in terms, right? But the point is really this, right? You have to see it from the point of view of somebody who will not, right? You understand the fact that somebody will not get the access to the lawyering networks that other people have very easy because of community and caste connections, right? You have to try and understand a lot of the decisions in the context of somebody who finds it difficult to move forward in terms of lawyering as a profession, not because of the competence. Competence is out of the world, of course, right? But in terms of community and caste connections. And the point to make again is why a lawyer, right? This might again be very, very, very important in the time going forward in India as we speak today. He says, right, the reason I became a lawyer is provided me the independence to be the person that I wanted to be and do the social work that I wanted to do, right? If you're working for the government, you can't do a range of things. If you're a teacher in the university, again, the range of ways in which your possibilities are confined. But if you're a lawyer, right, there's a way in which you still, in India today, preserve an independence and autonomy. And so that might be one again, very important, very central lesson we might want to take from Baba Sahib with respect to being a lawyer. And the last 2 points we want to make is Baba Sahib as a activist and as a thinker. I'll make again one very quick point, is again go to this very recent book on the evolution of pragmatism in India by Scott Stroud, who looks at Ambedkar as an heir to the pragmatist tradition, right? And there's one very important point he makes, which I think again is a very central thread in understanding Baba Sahib's work. If you read Annihilation of Caste, there's a distinction Baba Sahib makes between principles and rules, right? Very central. The idea of a principle, a rule, is something you have to follow. The rule says do this, you have to do that. Principle gets the reasoning underlying it. And what is his argument for the annihilation of caste for saying we will not have faith in the Hindu religion as it exists? The argument is the Hindu religion as it exists is a religion based on rules. If again in Karnataka, if you read Samskara, you are the Samskara, you get a sense of it, right? When you have from morning to night, if your life is controlled by rules, you do this, do that, where is the role for reason? Where is the role for thinking? So Baba's argument is we need a religion. We need a religion of principles and not rules, right? And so again, just keep that in mind as a thinker. There are many more points to make about Baba Sahib as a thinker, but keep this one point in mind, that he's always arguing, even in the conversion to Buddhism, right? What is the Buddhism that he's talking about? The Buddhism is talking about a religion based on principles, not on rules, right? So there's a way in which reasoning and thinking things through is at the heart of his endeavor from the very beginning. And again, it's a golden thread.
I'll try to request you to wind up, Arvind, maybe quickly. Then we.
Yeah, I'll end with that. I think there's lots more. No problem. Yeah.
All right. So quickly, thank you, Arvind. I mean, I am very sure the way you were speaking, you have a lot of more things to be added, and I had to kind of pause you in between. Apologies for that. But we'll come back to you again quickly. मेरे कुछ साथियों के लिए जो हिंदी बैकग्राउंड से हैं, उनके लिए मैं बताना चाहूंगा बहुत ही जल्द। जो अरविंद ने बहुत अपने सामने बातें रखी, उसमें वो बाबा साहब के 4 रूप के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं स्पष्ट रूप से। वो कह रहे हैं, और उन्होंने ये बोला कि 7 रूप हैं बाबा साहब के, बट बाबा साहब अभी जिन रूप के बारे में वो बात कर रहे हैं, बाबा साहब के 4 रूप के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं। और जब वो बात कर रहे हैं तो वो किस हद तक, किस गहराई तक उन्होंने भारतीय संविधान को समझने की कोशिश की है उसको बनाते समय। और उसमें जब हम सम्मान की बात करते हैं, हम कानून की बात करते हैं, हम सामाजिक न्याय की बात करते हैं, तो उसको समझते हुए कैसे बाबा साहब ने चीजों को जोड़ा है। और सिर्फ संविधान बनाने तक ही नहीं, उसके बाद भी उनका जो पूरा स्ट्रगल था, उनके बाद भी उनका पूरा संघर्ष था, वो किस हद तक वो लागू रहा है। दूसरा जो कई बार हम उनको देखते हैं कि बाबा साहब जो हैं एक लॉयर थे, लेकिन जब हम और उनको आगे लेके जाते हैं, एक संविधान निर्माता के तौर पर उनको देखते हैं, एक कानून के स्पेशलिस्ट के तौर पे देखते हैं, विशेषज्ञ के तौर पे देखते हैं, और हम उनको एक सामाजिक कार्यकर्ता के तौर पे देखते हैं, पॉलिटिशियंस के तौर पे भी देखते हैं। तो पहला, बहुत ही स्पष्ट रूप से उन्होंने बोला है कि जो भारत की सामाजिक न्याय और सामाजिक विज्ञान की जो पढ़ाई है, उसने काफी हद तक बाबा साहब की सोच को, उनके विचारों को दबा के रखने की कोशिश की है पिछले कुछ वर्षों में, जो बाहर आनी चाहिए थी बट वो बाहर नहीं आई है, जिसकी वजह से आज हमारा पूरा एक मूवमेंट खड़ा हुआ है जो बाबा साहब की इन सारी चीजों को, इन सारी बातों को बाहर लेकर ला रहा है। और जब आज लोगों को रियलाइज हो रहा है कि हाँ, वो किस हद तक वो पूरा का पूरा जो मूवमेंट खड़ा हुआ है, वो बाबा साहब का किस हद तक वो उन 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 उस बात को, उस ज्ञान को जो काफी हद तक समुदाय ने छुपाने की कोशिश की है पिछले कुछ वर्षों से, और उसको बाहर लाने की एक कोशिश है, और मूवमेंट का एक हिस्सा है वो। और चार तरीके के, जब हम बाबा साहब की बात कर रहे हैं तो बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से अरविंद कह रहे हैं कि चार तरीके के बाबा साहब की एक पहचान है। पहला, एक रीडर, और इसलिए वो बार बार इंसिस्ट भी कर रहे हैं, और मुझे लगता है हम सब लोग बार बार बात करते हैं, जब संवैधानिक लिटरेसी, संवैधानिक हमें क्यों संविधान पढ़ने की जरूरत है, संविधान से जुड़ी चीजें जानने की क्यों जरूरत है, उस पर बार बार अरविंद एक इंसिस्ट कर रहे हैं। और बाबा साहब ने बार बार बोला है कि हाँ, तुम्हें कहीं ना कहीं पढ़ाई की बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत पड़ती है। और उन्होंने एक चीज कोट की है जहां पे उन्होंने बोला है कि हम स्वर्ग तक गए, और स्वर्ग से हमने देखने की कोशिश की जमीन की तरफ, तो सारे के सारे सितारे अलग लगे हमको। तो वो कहना चाह रहे हैं कि आप एक पीक पे पहुंचने के बाद देखते हो तो सबकी एक अपनी अलग पहचान है, बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से, और सबकी अपनी अलग पहचान के हिसाब से एक अलग तरीके का सामाजिक न्याय, एक अलग तरीके का संवैधानिक मूल अधिकारों से जुड़ी बातें निकल के आ रही है, जिसपे उन्होंने एक रोहित वर्मुला के बारे में भी बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से अरविंद ने बताया है। और बाबा साहब के लॉयर होने की पहचान को लेकर अरविंद उसको बहुत ही स्पष्ट रूप से उस पर प्रकाश डालते हैं, और कहते हैं कि जिस तरह गांधी की पहचान थी और वो साउथ अफ्रीका गए पढ़ाई करने के लिए, उनकी पहचान की वजह से, उनकी ऑलरेडी वहां पे जानकारी थी, तो उनके लिए इजी था, जिन्ना अच्छे खासे जानते थे लोगों को, उन्होंने विदेश में पढ़ाई की। बट बाबा साहब की जब पढ़ाई की बात आई तो बार बार वो संघर्ष, जातिगत ब्राह्मणवाद, और साथ में जो कम्युनिटी का प्रेशर रहता है, समुदाय प्रेशर रहता है, वो कैसे उनको पीछे खींचता रहा। बट फिर भी वो इंसान वो आगे बढ़ता रहा, और उसने एक अपनी अपनी अलग इमेज कोशिश की। तीसरा जो बार बार स्पष्ट रूप से कह रहे हैं अरविंद ने, मैं इसको बोल के खत्म करूंगा, जहां पे उन्होंने बाबा साहब एज अ थिंकर, बाबा साहब विचारक के तौर पे, और वो इस चीज को पहले और दूसरे पॉइंट से जोड़कर बोलते हैं अरविंद, और कहते हैं कि बाबा साहब एक विचारक के तौर पे, जहां उन्होंने नियमों को और सिद्धांतों के बीच में अंतर करके बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से बताया है कि सिद्धांत क्या होने चाहिए और आपके नियम क्या होने चाहिए, आपके रूल्स आपके क्या होने चाहिए, और उसके इर्द गिर्द कैसे कास्ट और रिलीजन की पूरी चर्चा हुई है। और फिर बुद्धिज्म पे उन्होंने बताया कि कैसे बुद्धिज्म सिद्धांत के इर्द गिर्द नजर आता है, जिसपे बाबा साहब ने काफी ज्यादा चर्चा की है। तो मैं कोशिश करूंगा कि ऐसे जब पॉसिबल होगा मैं हिंदी में बात करने की, उसको ट्रांसलेट करने की कोशिश करूंगा। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अरविंद, बहुत पावरफुल था सेशन ये स्टार्ट करने के लिए। आई विल गेट बैक टू यू। सो meanwhile I would also like to get back on some talk about how जब हम अनुच्छेद 16-17 की बात कर रहे हैं, टचेबिलिटी की बात कर रहे हैं थे अरविंद बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से, तो हम बार बार कहते हैं कि बाबा साहब इज वन ऑफ द की आर्किटेक्ट ऑफ इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, but the way he has kind of enshrined Indian freedom movement, which has played a vital role in ensuring to have an article like Article 17, a separate article which talks about untouchability, which talks about, you know, deep-rooted caste system itself. And he kind of emphasized the need to have a very strong legislative measures to abolish untouchability, because he knew at the ground, at the crux, it was the untouchability which was impacting everything. And he was, like Arvind also added, he was a thinker and he was a believer more of a believer than of a thinker, which gave him strength apparently. So he also believed that constitution should reflect the aspirations of the marginalized, aspirations of Dalits, aspirations of Adivasi, aspirations of women, in which provided necessary legal protection. And काफी हद तक बाबा साहब ने भी जो अस्पृश्यता है, छुआछूत है, उसको समाप्त करने के और सभी नागरिकों के लिए उनकी जाति और सामाजिक स्थिति की परवाह किए बिना समानता सुनिश्चित करने के लिए एक मजबूत उपाय की आवश्यकता पर जोर दिया है। मैं यहाँ पे खत्म करूंगा अपनी बात को। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अरविंद। I would like to request Indra to come up, join us. And Indra is a lawyer. She's an advocate. She's from Delhi NCR specifically, and she's been working with different various courts, district courts, High Court, Delhi High Court, and of course Supreme Court. She has been extensively practicing over there. She's an activist lawyer, and her work is largely focused on the marginalized sections, especially Dalits, Adivasis, and other. When we talk about the whole aspect of urban aspect of access to justice issues, and of course, when we talk about constitution, her heart actually lies in the Indian Constitution. So, can we have Indra? Can you please come and we can start the session now? And it would be good if you can speak in Hindi and English both. So I'm sorry to say you have 10 minutes, maybe. Then we can request Clara to pitch in. Thank you. Thank you, Indra.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you, Arvind, for setting that really wonderful perspective. मैं एक्चुअली कोशिश करूँगी बिकॉज वी यूजली आर्ग्यू इन इंग्लिश, लेकिन जितना मेरे में होगा आई विल ट्राई. मैं एक्चुअली मोर देन दलित ग्रुप्स एट्सेट्रा, मैं मार्जिनलाइज ग्रुप्स के साथ काम करती हूँ. सो आई हैव वर्कड विद स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स जो पटरी पे काम करते हैं, ऑल्सो विद झुग्गी ड्वेलर्स, जो लोग झुग्गियों में रहते हैं और जिनके घर को तोड़ा गया है, डेमोलिशन किया गया है जिनका, और ऑल्सो विद साइकिल रिक्शा प्लायर्स. तो मैं तीनों के बारे में इसलिए पहले बात करना चाहती हूँ, जस्ट एज एन ओवरव्यू, बिकॉज डिस्पाइट द फैक्ट दैट इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, हमारे संविधान में जो प्रियम्बल कहती है, एंड दैट्स डॉक्टर अम्बेडकर्स very key contribution. There are 3 lines I'd like to read, actually 4. One is justice, which is social, economic and political. तो न्याय मिलना चाहिए तीनों एस्पेक्ट्स में, सामाजिक, आर्थिक और राजनीतिक. लिबर्टी ऑफ थॉट, एक्सप्रेशन, बिलीफ, फेथ एंड वर्शिप. तो हमें इसमें फ्रीडम होना चाहिए, ऐसा नहीं कि हमारे ख्यालों पर बंधन हो. इक्वालिटी ऑफ स्टेटस एंड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी, we have to be equal. There has to be equality of opportunity. हमें chance तो जो दिया जाए, there shouldn't be a handicap that we start with. And to promote among all fraternity, assuring the dignity, आत्मसम्मान of the individual, and unity and integrity of the nation. अब itne strongly it's been worded. Despite that, we have to struggle so much for these groups that we work with, and I will talk about how we face it as practitioners in the courts. Or the heart and soul of the Constitution is Article 32, which is actually a method of guaranteeing the fundamental rights. So Ambedkar also said. And जो fundamental rights वो part 3 है संविधान के, and I will urge you all to go through it. बहुत simple भाषा में है, और articles 12 से लेके 35 तक, जहाँ पे कुछ मौलिक अधिकारों का वर्णन किया गया है. We have articles 14, for example, equality before the law. Article 19, which is very, very important also, freedom of speech, expression, जिस पर मैंने काम किया है, freedom जो आजीविका का freedom है. Article 21, right to justice as well as right to dignity, right to life and liberty. तो इन एस्पेक्ट्स में मैं बात करते वक्त मैं ये कहना चाहूँगी कि द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट हैपन्स इन in our country and among marginalized groups which are the urban poor, जो कि जैसे साइकिल रिक्शाज जो चलाते हैं, जो अपनी मेहनत से कुछ कमाने की कोशिश करते हैं इतना स्ट्रगल के बाद, द स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स जिनका हक है और जो मतलब डिस्पाइट डिफरेंट एलिमेंट्स ऑफ द वेदर दे ट्राई टू वर्क एंड अर्न एन ऑनेस्ट लाइवलीहुड, एंड जो झुग्गियों में रहते हैं, जो गांव से शहरों में आके दे ट्राई टू eke out a living by working and living in the place that they by working in the place where they live. और उनके जो conditions हैं, they're not great. In fact, the state is supposed to provide housing, is supposed to provide employment, but उसके बावजूद जो वो होता नहीं है. अब होता क्या है कि those who make the, firstly many of them don't have laws to protect them, but बहुत struggle के बाद street vendors के लिए एक कानून लाया गया. But earlier they used to be as per the whims and fancies of the म्यूनिसिपैलिटीज़ यानी कि नगर पालिका, नगर नियम जो कहती है कि अगर ठीक है आज आप यहाँ पे खड़े हो सकते हैं, यहाँ से आप कमा सकते हैं तो ठीक है. सो वन इज़ द आर्बिट्रेरीनेस ऑफ द लॉज, यानी कि आर्टिकल 14 के तहत जो गारंटी है कि हम समानता से हमें स्टेट देखेगी, वो नहीं होता है. दूसरा है कि there is a lot of arbitrary removal of people from the streets. अगर आज नगर पालिका को पैसा नहीं दिया जाता है तो then because of this lack of bribery, lack of, or rather than lack of it, meaning they insist there is a whole well-oiled extortion racket, but if somebody is unable to pay a bribe, then they are removed, people are removed from the streets. And of course jhuggis are broken, you know, at the whims and fancies of the establishments. Now what happens is, the first thing that is done is a labeling. मतलब सबसे पहले इन ग्रुप्स को एंक्रोचर्स बुलाया जाता है. तो एक लफ्ज में their rights are stripped away of them. By labeling someone as an encroacher, you're straight away saying that they do not have dignity, they do not have the right to exist to start with, and also they certainly don't have the rights to shelter or to ply a cycle rickshaw or to street vend. So that's the first objection that we have. And unfortunately, despite laws being there protecting them today, we also have a landmark judgment as well, which is Manushi Sangathan versus government of NCT and Delhi, where the courts have very categorically held that cycle rickshaw plying is recognized as a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(g). So that is as far as cycle rickshaw plying is concerned. As far as street vendors are concerned, now there are street vendor laws. Nobody who is a street vendor can be removed except by taking the recourse to law, or except if they violate some of the terms and conditions under which they ply their wares. Uske बावजूद there is a huge amount of indignity heaped on them by removing street vendors arbitrarily. So the first step that is taken is against the constitution, which is by excluding these classes or these groups of people by calling them encroachers and also by invisibilizing them. You will also be very shocked that the proof of existence of a street vendor is a चालान. मतलब अगर इस स्ट्रीट वेंडर ने कोई इलीगैलिटी की है, यानी कि उन पर चालान लागू किया गया है, तो उसी के बल वो ये साबित कर सकता है या कर सकती है कि हाँ मैं वहाँ पे स्ट्रीट वेंडिंग करती थी. क्योंकि सबसे पहले क्या करती है नगर पालिका या जो DDA, जो डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटीज़ हैं या पुलिस, सबसे पहले आके ये कहती है कि ये लोग तो यहाँ पे मौजूद ही नहीं है, यानी कि ये लोग यहाँ पे थे ही नहीं. और नहीं तो ये बोलते हैं कि अलग अलग मार्केट्स जो 50-60 साल से वेंडिंग मार्केट्स हैं, जहाँ पे उनके राइट्स बिल्कुल स्ट्रॉन्ग हैं, जहाँ पे स्ट्रीट वेंडिंग एक्ट के तहत ये हिस्टोरिक मार्केट्स कहलाए जाएंगे, उसके बावजूद उन एरियाज़ को नो वेंडिंग जोन ठहराया गया है. यानी कि दे जस्ट it's pretended that such people didn't exist. So it's a very terrifying proposition actually that is proposed. And unfortunately, there is very little separation of powers in the courts. So what happens very often is people who have represented these authorities often sit as judges and find it very hard to separate themselves from actually from supporting the municipality in stating that these are encroachers, and as a result you have judgments that have come out which straight away tarnish the reputation of these people by terming them illegal and by continuing to strip them of their dignity. So that's a hard reality that we face constantly in the courts. So it's a huge struggle to even show that there is a right under which these people can continue to earn a livelihood with dignity and to live with dignity, or to to even exist in these places, because the first thing is they're shooed away. So the other thing I want to say is the manner of removal. There is no notice that is given. So because it's the very people who are supposed to enforce the laws, yani ki sarkar, the nagar palikas and the police, they know that what is being committed is an illegality, so therefore they do not provide any notice. As a result, the street vendors etc cannot take preemptive action by moving the courts. Very often it's a fait accompli. पहले से ही झुग्गी को तोड़ना या इनको remove करना और removing all traces of their existence and then saying कि ये लोग तो थे ही नहीं भाई. So then the case lingers and you're wiping them out and impoverishing them further. So it's against the very soul of the constitution to have an egalitarian society, to prevent a concentration of economic powers, to prevent an indignity of a people that are really struggling. In fact, it's also important to recognize that street vendors, cycle rickshaw pullers, etc., you don't need to, the state doesn't even need to generate employment for them because they are self-employed. And there's been a cognizance that they contribute hugely to the national income as well. तो उस नज़रिए से देखने से भी these classes are contributing. लेकिन unfortunately, और ख़ास तौर से आजकल के ज़माने में there's a very elitist attitude. So you're literally begging for crumbs in the courts to get justice. So that's something I wanted to point out, the problems that we're facing at this juncture, and then we can later on this next stage talk about solutions. I also just have one little thing before I hand over, which is we also work with women, and it's more in the realm of family law. There's a lot that has been said about false cases being filed by women. I have personally seen how there's, the cases that are very genuine, where there is danger to the life and even limb of women because of the violence within the four walls of the home, are not taken very seriously today in court, because a lot of the judges, I think it's a very patriarchal setup. So the approach is अच्छा सीधा ही बोल देते हैं कि झूठ बोल रही होगी. So even if you're asking for your rights under the Domestic Violence Act, rights under the criminal laws, very often you're denied of them, or there is such a huge delay that it becomes very infructuous. Under Article 21, I would also like to talk about the right to justice. Article 21 guarantees us the right to justice as well. Right to justice means right to timely justice. So I would also urge both government authorities, because 70% cases to mein sarkar is one of the litigants, and the courts themselves really need to expedite giving swift reliefs, because क्या होता है कि justice delayed is justice denied. We all know that. So as a result, what happens is that जब अगर कोई case डालें, तो the problem is that the justice is forthcoming in such a delayed manner that people do give up hope. So there are lots of recommendations that we have in terms of uh, ensuring rights, ensuring dignity, and cutting down on delays. But more on that later. So I urge us to look at this, just generate the awareness that these are problems that exist. So I'm very grateful to be here today to talk about this, so that we start, continue this conversation and try to come out with some kind of solution. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Indra. So, I mean, I think जिस हद तक हम चीजों को समझ रहे हैं, जिस हद तक इंदिरा ने बोला, वो कई बार हमारी बात आती है सामने, और वो शहरी विकास क्या होता है, शहरी न्याय क्या होता है, जिसपे हम कई बार चर्चा करने से पीछे हट जाते हैं। तो इंदिरा ने उसी बात को बार बार बोला है, बार बार समझाया है कि शहरी न्याय एक्चुअली होता क्या है, और क्यों जब हम किसी को बोल देते हैं नहीं तुम बाहर से आए हो, तो वो खुद में ही ये बता देता है कि नहीं, तुम्हारे पास कोई तुम्हारे अधिकार नहीं है। और वहां पे बात आती है सम्मान की लड़ाई की, आपके आत्मसम्मान की लड़ाई की। जब हम आर्टिकल 21 की बात करते हैं, डिग्निटी की बात करते हैं, तो जैसे इंदिरा बोल रही हैं, शहर में जब हम झुग्गियों में जाते हैं, हम रिक्शा पुलर्स के साथ बात करते हैं, तो वहां पे संविधान की क्या ताकत है, किस तरह से वो निकल के आती है, उस बारे में बहुत ही स्पष्ट रूप से इंदिरा यहाँ पे चर्चा कर रही है। दूसरी चीज ये है जो इंदिरा ने बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से बोला है, वो है जेंडर की जो बात की है, जो लैंगिक भेदभाव होता है। और अपना उन्होंने खुद का एक्सपीरियंस बताया है कि कैसे ऑलरेडी एक बायसनेस होती है दिमाग में जजेस की, जस्टिस सिस्टम की, जब हम बात करते हैं कि जो बोल रहे होगे झूठी बोल रहे होगे। दूसरी चीज, और इंदिरा यही नहीं, मैंने भी कई बार कोर्ट वगैरह में देखा है, ऑब्जर्व किया है, जहाँ पे एक वुमेन लॉयर इंटर करती ही है, जैसे ही वो इंटर करती है कोर्ट रूम्स में, तो लगभग वहां पे उपस्थित 30 से 40 अगर लोग हैं, तो उसमें से कम 25 से 30 लोग उस महिला को देखेंगे वो अंदर आ रही है, या फिर कुछ लोग कमेंट्स करते हैं। तो वो कितना मुश्किल होता है जब हम जब जब जो आप स्ट्रगल जिस बारे में बात बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से कर रही है, और जब वो दलित महिला होती है, तो वो और भी ज्यादा उसके साथ वो चीजें जुड़ जाती हैं, कई तरीके का चीजें उसमें आगे निकल के आती हैं। और जब हम बात कर रहे हैं, अम्बेडकर की बात कर रहे हैं, तो विशेषकर दलित महिलाओं के लिए उन्होंने जो देखा बचपन से, जो जाना, जो समझा, उस पे अधिकारों को और लैंगिक समानता को लेकर उन्होंने एक लड़ाई लड़ी और बहुत ज्यादा महत्व दिया है जब हम महिलाओं के अधिकारों की बात करते हैं। और उन्होंने बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से कहा है कि विकास उसी समुदाय में हो सकता है जिस समुदाय में महिलाओं की सम्मान होता है, और उसको बार बार उन्होंने जोर दिया। और खासतौर पे शिक्षा को लेकर आप बात कीजिए, एजुकेशन को लेकर बात कीजिए, आप संपत्ति के अधिकार को लेकर बात कीजिए, जो अभी हम जिस चीज की लड़ाई अभी लड़ रहे हैं, जिस चीज को लेकर हम आज मुद्दे उठा रहे हैं, वो उस इंसान ने वो उस समय पे इमेजिन किया था, उस समय पे उसने बता दिया था। जैसे आप हिंदू कोड बिल की बात कर रहे हैं, अभी 2005 में एक अधिकार मिला था, संपत्ति का अधिकार मिला था महिलाओं को लेकर। वो अंबेडकर ने, जब आप बात करेंगे 1940, 1945, 1950, उनका पूरा का पूरा लड़ाई इसी के बेस पे था। तो इस हद तक उन्होंने उस चीज इमेजिन की थी कि हाँ, तो हमें करना चाहिए। और खासतौर पे जब सामाजिक और राजनीतिक अधिकारों की बात करते हैं, तो वो पूरी लड़ाई बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से, हालांकि उनको बहुत ज्यादा आलोचनाएं सहनी पड़ी थी, लड़ाई कमजोर पड़ी, काफी बार उनको रेजिग्नेशन भी देना पड़ा इस चीज को लेकर, बट वो रुके नहीं। एंड दैट्स अ रीजन व्हाई अंबेडकर काइंड ऑफ रिकॉग्नाइज्ड द इंटरसेक्शनैलिटी ऑफ कास्ट एंड जेंडर ऑपरेशन ऑल टुगेदर, particularly specifically for the Dalit women, and who are still facing multiple forms of discrimination. It's not like only on basis of caste and gender. And to some extent, he kind of emphasized and challenged the patriarchal norm existing over there in itself, and a number of debates, constitutional assembly debates, which have been happening. He has specifically mentioned about gender, why it's need to be brought in. And accordingly, I'll also request Clara to pitch in. I would like to introduce Clara to हमारे सभी साथियों को लेकर। Clara एक developmental practitioner है. She's also a Dalit feminist. She has been speaking, writing a lot about how the caste and gender impacts Dalit women's life, and also to some extent she has been working with, she was working with Pradhan extensively for past 10 to 15 years in Betul district, and of course to few of the areas of Madhya Pradesh. And now she's also presently based in Rajasthan, but is also a strong Ambedkarite, I would say, Clara. You can also add few things if you want to. You're open to adding to your own introduction. And of course, a very powerful person who comes up with a very powerful speeches and very powerful words sometimes, which has also forced me to some extent think about, the whole aspect of social justice. So Clara, can we request you to pitch in, and like you have 10 minutes, then we get back to Arvind. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you for such a kind introduction. And I will say a bit exaggerated also as well, but that's very kind of you. But first of all, I will thank you, Nazar, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this forum. So I have worked basically with making justice accessible to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe women in the grassroots. When I say grassroots, it's basically I'm referring to the villages in Madhya Pradesh, the villages where PESA is active. So today I will be talking on access to justice. I will try to bring it from the perspective of the women from the grassroots only, the women, the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe women who are socioeconomically marginalized, and where does Ambedkar idea fits in this making justice accessible to the most marginalized one. So I will start it with I will share my understanding by referring to an incident which has happened. Okay, so I will try to keep it in Hindi as well. So in this incident has happened. ये जो हुआ था, ये हो रखा है, एक गांव है आपका मध्य प्रदेश के बैतूल डिस्ट्रिक्ट में गांव है, वहां पे एक इंसिडेंट हुआ था जिसमें एक 14-15 साल की लड़की जो है वो अपने घर से मिसिंग, शी वॉज मिसिंग फॉर अराउंड 6-7 days, और उसकी मम्मी जो है, मदर जो है, डेली वेज लेबरर हैं, and she has been migrated to a 200 kilometer away place and she was working there, and she was a single woman. जब वो 3-4 दिन बाद अपने घर वापस आती हैं to the village और वो अपनी लड़की को ढूंढती हैं, तो उन्हें अपनी लड़की मिलती नहीं है। तो वो ढूंढती हैं अपने नेबर्स के यहाँ, सबको अप्रोच करती है, एंड तभी भी जब उन्हें उनकी लड़की नहीं मिलती है, then she came to us for support that हमें अपनी लड़की नहीं मिल रही है and I want to approach it legally. So आप बताइए कैसे करें। So क्योंकि मैं पैरालीगल्स के साथ काम करती हूँ, पैरालीगल्स जो कि सेम दलित और ट्राइब कम्युनिटी से आते हैं और उन्हें थोड़ी बहुत लीगल नॉलेज ली और एज ए सर्टिफाइड पैरालीगल प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं बैतूल एरिया में। और इन महिलाओं को, जो हमारी शेड्यूल कास्ट और शेड्यूल ट्राइब की महिलाएं हैं, सोशली इकोनॉमिकली एक्सक्लूडेड कम्युनिटीज से जो आते हैं, उन्हें जस्टिस प्रोवाइड करने में। तो ये दोनों महिलाएं जाती हैं उनके साथ पुलिस स्टेशन, क्योंकि हमें लगता है कि सबसे पहला स्टेप होना चाहिए फाइलिंग एन FIR। तो सबसे पहले जाती है FIR फाइल करने, एंड चीजें होती हैं। फिर शाम को क्या होता है, टू टेक अ रिव्यू आई टॉक टू द पैरालीगल। सो वन ऑफ द पैरालीगल्स tell me, and she was very furious in a very angry tone. She tell me कि आज तो पुलिस स्टेशन में जो हुआ, हम गए FIR लिखने और पुलिस वाला बोलता है कि आप अपनी लड़की को अकेले छोड़ के जा कैसे सकते हो काम करने। कौन सी महिला, कौन सी माँ अपनी बेटी को अकेले घर में छोड़ के काम करने जाती है। So this was the thing. And then the other paralegal who was co-accompanied the woman for filing an FIR. She tell कि ठीक है, उसने जो बोला, but our priority was filing a missing report. That was our priority. We need to tolerate it. हमें थोड़ा टाइम तो ये सहन के पड़ के, लेकिन हमें FIR मिसिंग रिपोर्ट तो हमें फाइल करनी थी ताकि प्रोसेसेस आगे बढ़ पाए। So when this incident happened, so this incident, इस इंसिडेंट ने मुझे एक चीज पे फोकस करने के लिए बोला, और मेरे दिमाग में तुरंत से बाबा साहेब आए जब ये चीज हुई थी। And how Baba Sahib came to my mind, that Baba Sahib in 1943, in one of his lectures, Baba Sahib has mentioned that rights aren't protected by law solely. That we have rights, and law is there to safeguard the rights. But Baba Sahib said that rights are not solely protected by law. The rights are protected by the social and moral conscience of a society. That's what Baba Sahib said in 1943. In Baba Sahib's point was that if rights are opposed by a community, if someone's rights, right, whether it's right to justice or right to dignity, is compromised by a community, by its community's social consciousness, then it's very difficult for a parliament, even for judiciary, to make it accessible to an individual in this sense. And why does this fit in here? That when that woman said, कि किसी ने मुझे बोला, to that woman said that, कि why do you send your, why were you working in the fields as a labor, and why did you, आपने अपनी लड़की को अकेले क्यों छोड़ा गांव में? Wasn't that against her dignity to question where she is working, why she is working? As if she had a choice, being a laborer, she has a choice that she can't okay, it's my choice that I have work here. I have enough economical sustainability, and then also I'm going to the fields working. That was not the condition. And at the same point of time, this other paralegal mentioning that my priority isn't what the police officer is saying or how he's treating the woman. It's that we need to find the missing report. So coming to this, when we talk about consciousness, I have felt that in the civil society. So I work with civil society and NGO. So when we try to safeguard or give someone's right, so government have two approach. Either we bring law or we create awareness. On the law part, I think Arvind and Indira can tell better because they have expertise on it. I will tell on the part of implementation of law and accessing the laws. So when it comes to the consciousness of a society, I think that we are doing it, that we try to create awareness on the part of that, what are the against the atrocity right and all those things we are doing, but there is very less has been done on creating a consciousness on the part, on raising the consciousness of the perpetrator. In this case, the police officer, I will say that the police officer in this case, I don't think any input by any government policies, by any initiative have been done to sensitize him that how on the basis of caste and gender, that how a police officer will be treating a person. I don't think any inputs have been given. So I think that although our approach has been, and I think it's very less we have done on sensitizing the other section of the society, which were the perpetrators. Even if when we reflect the data, we go to data, everyone says that that 30% of the rural, as per data said that we discriminate. 30% of the people have agreed that we practice untouchability. But what with that data? What are we doing with that data, that section of the society? So that's something where I will say that how we can work for the raising the consciousness of the this section of the society, basically the people who are discriminating. But then also I will say that if we are working in that section as also, then we can't ensure that justice will be accessible to the women. So my experience working in the grassroots what I have experienced that unfortunately the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe women and the other marginalized genders comes at the margin. The poorest of the poor socioeconomically, the women and the other oppressed gender, I will say they come. And justice is quite far for them. It's physically, because if you will say when they were trying to access the justice, which is the nearest police station, that is about 20 kilometers away, and the roads, and they are not connected by roads. And there are a lot of other impediments which she is crossing while accessing justice. That is, she's putting a stake on her social security and economic security. I will try to share this with an example that when a woman was working in a field and she tried to file a report against the contractor, then the people from the other community told her that if you will file a complaint, then we won't get the work here again. So when a woman is trying to access justice, she's putting her social security, economic security at the stake. So while we also design different hours for accessing justice, while we are designing our programs, and this is basically to the civil societies and activists, when we design this awareness camp, we sometimes try to, we miss this holistic approach of it. That what, after accessing the law, what happens with that woman? So various times we miss this factor of it, and various times we miss the holistic approach of it. So yeah, with this, I will conclude. Yeah. I will hand over to Naveen. This is from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. In fact, this was very powerful because you have brought in the whole aspect of grassroots experiences which you have been facing since past few years, and the way all of us understand that what are the basic challenges, what are the basic loopholes in the legal system, and how I totally agree with you that Indra and Arvind can more in a better manner present the whole legal aspect. The way you have brought in the whole social aspect and the economical aspect attached to access to justice is very powerful indeed, and it's good that it came up today in this discussion. मैं उसको थोड़ा सा हिंदी में बताना चाहूंगा साथियों को। क्लारा ने अंत में जो बोला है, हालांकि शुरुआत में उन्होंने काफी चीजें हिंदी में बोली थी। क्लारा ने एक तरीके से नैतिक और सामाजिक कॉन्साइंस सोच नजरिया की बात की है। उन्होंने बोला है कि हम कानून बनाते टाइम क्या इन चीजों को ध्यान रखते हैं कि खाली हम कानून बना देते हैं और उसके बाद हम उसको लेकर आगे बढ़ जाते हैं। जब हम कास्ट और जेंडर की बात बार बार कर रहे हैं, आज भी बात हम कर रहे हैं। दूसरा, जब हम पर्पिट्रेटर जो वो शब्द यूज कर रहे हैं, पर्पिट्रेटर वो होता है जिसका डर किसी भी विक्टिम या किसी सर्वाइवर या किसी कंप्लेनेंट को होता है, जिसने वो क्राइम किया हो या फिर कथित रूप से बोला जाए कि वो क्राइम उसके द्वारा किया गया हो, उसको पर्पिट्रेटर बोला जाता है। तो बहुत ही स्पष्ट रूप से वो कह रही है कि हम जब कानून बनाते हैं तो बहुत ही ज्यादा विक्टिम सेंट्रिक कानून कई बार बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं, लेकिन उस वक्त पर्पिट्रेटर के दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है और उसको कैसे टैकल करना है, उसको बनाने में हम काफी हद तक फेल हो रहे हैं। और क्योंकि जब थाने में जाती है एक दलित महिला, तो कई बार वो जो पर्पिट्रेटर्स होते हैं वो सिर्फ वो नहीं होता जिसने क्राइम किया है। पर्पिट्रेटर्स वहाँ पे पुलिस वाले भी बन जाते हैं, पर्पिट्रेटर्स वहाँ पे और लोग बन जाते हैं जो उससे जुड़े हैं, और खास तौर पे पर्पिट्रेटर पूरी का पूरा एक राज्य, पूरी सरकार बन जाती है जो कहीं ना कहीं उस दलित महिला को और भी ज्यादा दलित आदिवासी महिला को और भी ज्यादा निचले स्तर तक पुश करने की कोशिश करती है। जब हम मानसिक और नैतिक न्याय की बात स्पष्ट रूप से कर रहे हैं। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया क्लारा ये पूरा का पूरा एस्पेक्ट लाने की, और इसने काफी हद तक पूरे कॉन्वर्जेशन को काफी ज्यादा पावरफुल और मजबूत बनाया है। मैं अभी तक हम शायद से टाइम से ही चल रहे हैं फॉर्चुनेटली, तो लेट्स सी आगे हम कैसे जाएंगे। हमारे पास आधा घंटा और है। मीनवाइल हम अभी what we can do now is we can again go back to Arvind, maybe Arvind, and Arvind, it would be good, Arvind, if you can present the whole aspect of constitution and access to justice, bringing it together, and then we can open the floor. तो मैं अरविंद से रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ वापस, क्योंकि मैंने अरविंद को बीच में रोक दिया था, कि वापस वो एक संविधान और न्याय को कैसे जोड़कर देखते हैं और कैसे उसको हम आगे ले जा सकते हैं। जिसके बाद मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा इंदिरा या क्लारा, आप में से कोई अगर जोड़ना चाहे तो प्लीज पिच इन। और Khalil, can we have questions from the floor after that?
Yes, Naveen.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so meanwhile we'll also try to finish it earlier so that आखिरी के 15 मिनट हमारे साथी जो भी सवाल रखना चाहें वो अपने सवाल रख सकते हैं। Meanwhile you can also put the questions in the chat box and we'll go through this. आप लोग chat box में अपने सवाल रख सकते हैं, उसको हम पढ़कर, कोशिश होगा तो खलील हमारे साथी हैं और भी साथी हैं, वो अगर हो सका तो हम उसमें जवाब दे देंगे, या फिर अंत में कोई साथी बोलना चाहे सवालों के साथ में तो वो बोल सकता है आखिरी के 15 मिनट। सो अरविंद, maybe you can start now. You have like 10 minutes, maybe we quickly finish. Thank you.
Thanks, Naveen. And thanks to both Indra and Clara for referencing particular dimensions or aspects of the Constitution. And so again, perhaps the question is, why do we need to go back to the Constitution? There's a thinker, Alexis Tocqueville, from the French thinker with the United States. He has a very beautiful way of putting it. He says, when the past ceases to shed light upon the future, then the mind of man wanders as in hopeless obscurity. So the idea is really this. I see the Constitution as providing a set of values with which we're able to think about questions of social justice. And that's what Indra so powerfully illustrated, and that's what Clara as well spoke about. So the Constitution is that document which actually embodies these series of values which become very integral to all the work that we do in different dimensions of social justice. So for us to understand, again, these constitution, again, the way you framed it in the third note, as a series, as a set of values. It's not just a set of rules, but a set of values. And what are those values which underlie the constitution? What is Baba Saheb's contribution to those values? Again, it's very interesting. You go back to the drafting of the Indian Constitution. It begins with Pandit Nehru moving the objective resolution, right? He moves the objective resolution, and the objective resolution is generally greeted with a great deal of, everybody says it's wonderful, and everybody applauds Pandit Nehru on the objective resolution. One dissenting note, not exactly a dissenting note, but one note which says that it's not such a great thing which you moved, which is Baba Saheb Ambedkar. I'll read out to you what he has to say. His objection, if you want to call it that, is this. He says that you moved the objective resolution, which is the precursor to the preamble. But his point is, it's what you moved. I'm going to read out what he says. He says, what you moved has become a part and parcel of the mental makeup of modern man in every civilized part of the world. Also in our own country, which is so orthodox, so archaic in its thought and its social structure, hardly anybody can be found to deny its validity. To repeat it now, as the resolution does, is to say the least pure pedantry. These principles have become the silent, immaculate premise of our outlook. It is therefore unnecessary to proclaim it as forming a part of a creed. So Baba Saheb's point to Pandit Nehru is what you're saying. We all agree with. It's a part of our outlook. It's part of our, even in the country as archaic as ours, with as archaic mores as ours, nobody will deny of these mores. He goes on to say that he's disappointed with Pandit Nehru because he says Pandit Nehru is reputed to be a socialist. This resolution, though non-controversial, is very disappointing. I should have expected him to go much further than he has done that part of the resolution. So from today's point of view, what is so interesting is, though Baba Saheb was disappointed Pandit Nehru, he agreed with Pandit Nehru that what the resolution put forward, that is what is today the preamble, is something we're all on board with. That is, even in an archaic society such as ours, we all agree on these principles. Okay, what are these principles we all agree on? I'm going to very quickly highlight what are these principles we all agree on. The principles we all agree on, and again, Pandit Baba Saheb Ambedkar's contribution. If you look at again the objective resolution and the preamble, the two words which are not there in the objective resolution, which are there in the preamble. Nehru moves the objective resolution, but he does not use the word fraternity, and he does not use the word dignity. And those two words enter the preamble of the Indian Constitution because of Baba Saheb's insistence. So the question again, the question which we need to. Okay, fine. So the question again is, what is the relevance of the word dignity? What is the relevance of the word fraternity? I'll just highlight those 2 points. The Indian Constitution, the preamble says, fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. So the proposal at that moment in time is to reverse it. Say, fraternity, assuring the unity of the nation and the dignity of the individual. Again, B.N. Rao was another person associated with the drafting of the Indian Constitution, says we will go with the existing order. Because, again, the viewpoint the founders put was very, very interesting. The point they made is, see, how do you ensure the unity of the nation if you don't safeguard the dignity of the individual? Again, if you go back to Dr. Ambedkar's advocacy, he's very clear. He says that dignity is a central concept. What do you mean by dignity? By dignity, you mean a human being is an end in himself or herself. That is, there's a value in ensuring that you protect the individual regardless of any other extraneous considerations, as it were. Again, you go back to what is dignity, perhaps it may make sense to go back to Waiting for a Visa, Baba Saheb's earlier work, where you get a sense of what dignity means. When he talks about the indignity of going to school and being forced to sit on a gunny sack and being forced to wait for water for the peon to open the tap, as it were. So you get a sense of the experience of indignity, and why dignity was so central and so important to put in the Indian Constitution. Again, why this links so well to Indra's presentation is the idea of a principle which introduced in the Constitution, dignity, becomes something which is central to a range of rights we're talking about today. Be it the rights of street vendors, be it the rights of sexual minorities, be it the rights of a range of marginalized groups, dignity is absolutely a central concept which we understand, because dignity is the other humiliation is very central to the work that we do taking forward. The other principle I want to mention, which again was not there in the objectives resolution, but is there in the Constitution, is the principle of fraternity. Again, what does fraternity mean? Coming from the viewpoint of Baba Sahib, he makes it very clear. He says that liberty and equality without fraternity will be no deeper than a coat of paint. What does he mean by that? He says that if liberty without fraternity will mean the dominance of the few, equality without liberty will mean that you kill individual initiative. If you want to reconcile liberty and equality, we need fraternity. Because fraternity is what allows for a society to be mobile, to have interconnections within itself, to be a true society, where the way of relating across. Again, what is this fundamental objection to the caste system? The fundamental objection to the caste system is that it kills the idea of fraternity. You're not eating together, you're not loving across lines of caste, you're not living together, you're not a society. Because a society, end of the day, is a mobile, interconnected unit. Again, go back to the idea of democracy. I'll end with this last point. Again, he has a lot to teach us on what do you mean with the notion of democracy. Democracy, in Baba Sahib's opinion, is not just the idea that you have periodic elections. Democracy is what he calls is conjoined, associated living. So again, when you understand democracy, you understand it as a way of living which is beyond the notion of electoral democracy. So there's a social democracy, there's an economic democracy, and there's a political democracy. And if you don't have social democracy, you don't have economic democracy. Political democracy is something which is built on a house, is like a house of cards, and will collapse sooner or later. Gets back to the speech in the closing of the Indian Constitution, when it says we're entering into a life of contradictions, and unless we resolve, when we have equality at the political level, but inequality at the social and the economic level, then unless you solve this, the structure will blow itself up. Leaks up the last point. I'll end with this, which is you go to the Thomas Piketty's work, who is a very important economist today. He says India today is perhaps the most unequal society in the world. And the point which this respected economist is making is such a level of inequality is not sustainable. Sooner or later, the social tensions will show and the structure will blow itself up. And you go back to the closing speech Baba Sahib gave in the framing of the Indian Constitution, that's the same point he made. That is, unless you resolve, because of social inequality and economic inequality, you lay your political democracy in peril. So I think in today, if you're talking about the rise of fascism, you're talking about a rise of right-wing fundamentalism, a part of that blame can be laid at the door of the rising strand of inequality, which we have to deal with and we have to resolve. I'll end with that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. So I'll just quickly run through the points. मैं फिर से जल्दी से बात कर लेता हूँ कि अरविंद ने किस बारे में स्पष्ट रूप से बोला है और क्या वो कहना चाह रहे हैं. मीनवाइल मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा पैनलिस्ट से, वो कुछ सवाल आए हैं चैट बॉक्स में, सो आप लोग उसको पढ़ लें एक बार. And if you can go through and see if you want to respond to any of these questions, it would be good. We have 3 questions. So Arvind बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से बात कर रहे हैं कि कैसे जो है डिग्निटी एक इम्पोर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है, और कैसे बाबा साहब ने जब न्याय की बात होती है तो बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से वो कह रहे हैं कि क्यों जो है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एक डॉक्यूमेंट है जो सिर्फ और सिर्फ रूल्स नहीं बात करता है, सिर्फ नियम नहीं बना रहा है, बल्कि वो सिद्धांतों को तैयार कर रहा है काफी हद तक. और वो सिद्धांतों से वो ताकत आती है जब हम डिग्निटी की स्पष्ट रूप से बात करें, जहाँ पे एक सिर्फ और सिर्फ राइट टू लाइफ की बात नहीं हुई है. सिर्फ ये नहीं बोला गया है कि राइट टू लाइफ जो है जीवन जीने का अधिकार ही जो है हमारे साथ में रहता है, बट उसके साथ वो जीवन जीने का अधिकार जो है वो बहुत ही स्पष्ट रूप से वो आपका सम्मानजनक जीवन जीने के अधिकार होने की बात वो कर रहे हैं। और उस उपरांत बहुत ही जल्दी बहुत ही ज्यादा स्पष्ट रूप से अरविंद जी बोल रहे हैं कि एक तरीके से डेमोक्रेसी, एक सोशल डेमोक्रेसी, इकोनॉमिकल डेमोक्रेसी, पॉलिटिकल डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में उन्होंने चर्चा की है। सामाजिक लोकतंत्र क्या है, और आर्थिक लोकतंत्र क्या है, और राजनीतिक लोकतंत्र क्या है, जो उस समय बाबा साहब ने बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से उसको लेकर बात की थी। और कहीं ना कहीं इसके इर्द गिर्द पूरा न्याय का एक कॉन्सेप्ट बहुत ही मजबूती से निकल के आ रहा है। लेकिन अभी के हालात आप देखेंगे, मैं बहुत ज्यादा पॉलिटिकल डिस्कशन में नहीं जाऊंगा, राजनीतिक डिस्कशन में नहीं जाऊंगा, तो अभी के हालात में आप देखेंगे तो किस तरीके से सामाजिक लोकतंत्र और आर्थिक लोकतंत्र पे एक तरीके का अटैक हुआ है, और पूरा ढांचा गिराने की कोशिश भी एक तरीके से की जा रही है। और जो उस विजनरी बाबा साहब ने काफी समय पहले उसको स्पष्ट रूप से जो है बता दिया था। तो और मैं भी इसमें थोड़ा सा जोड़ना चाहूंगा अरविंद, और मैं अपने साथियों को थोड़ा सा बताना चाहूंगा कि क्यों अंबेडकर ने बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से एम्फसाइज किया था कि राइट टू लाइफ के साथ में जो है डिग्निटी, पर्सनल डिग्निटी की बात उन्होंने बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से की है। व्हाई ही डिड ही एक्चुअली वांटेड टू टॉक अबाउट dignity? And then during one of the constitutional debates itself, I was just reading jahan pe he kind of emphasized the importance of guaranteeing fundamental rights, including a right to life, dignity, and to some extent a more emphasis was paid on liberty to all the citizens also. And he kind of believed that this is very essential for the protection of Indian individuals' freedom and promotion of social and justice. And of course he got back to the debate again. He said that right to life should not be narrowly interpreted as mere existence. जीवन जीने का अधिकार सिर्फ और सिर्फ ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि हमें जीवन जीने का मौका मिल रहा है, बट वो to some extent it should also encompass dignity. It should also encompass fulfillment. And he kind of stressed upon the need for constitutional safeguards. And Indra was also specifically talking about Article 32, which talks about the soul of the Constitution. अनुच्छेद 32 जो हमें रेमेडीज देता है, हमें न्याय पाने का एक तरीका दे रहा है, वो कहीं ना कहीं बाबा साहब ने बोला था वो आत्मा है संविधान की। क्यों? क्योंकि आपके पास अधिकार हो सकते हैं, आपको राज्य के खिलाफ अधिकार मिल सकते हैं, राज्य उनको अगर लागू नहीं करता है तो आपके पास अगर कोई रेमेडी नहीं है उसके खिलाफ लड़ने के लिए, तो उन अधिकारों का कोई पॉइंट नहीं है। तो वो एक स्पष्ट रूप से जैसा उन्होंने बोला कि कुछ हद तक वो डिग्निटी वाला एस्पेक्ट है, टू एंश्योर दैट स्टेट रेस्पेक्टेड द डिग्निटी एंड राइट्स ऑफ एवरी इंडिविजुअल रिगार्डलेस ऑफ द कास्ट, रिगार्डलेस ऑफ द क्रीड, सोशो इकोनॉमिक स्टेटस, gender, and of course to some extent now the whole aspect of religion which is coming up very strongly. And उन्होंने बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से तर्क दिया कि जीवन जीने का अधिकार केवल अस्तित्व के रूप में एक व्याख्या ना की जाए तो बेहतर होगा, बल्कि पूरा सम्मान को और पूर्णता इसके रूप से जीवन जीने का अधिकार इसमें शामिल होना चाहिए। और कुछ हद तक जिस तरीके के संवैधानिक सुरक्षा उपाय और संवैधानिक अनुच्छेद उन्होंने तैयार किए हैं, और बल दिया उन्होंने स्पष्ट रूप से कि राज्य प्रत्येक व्यक्ति को, हर एक व्यक्ति को उनके गरिमा, उनके अधिकारों का सम्मान करे, और जाति, पंथ या सामाजिक आर्थिक स्थिति कुछ भी हो उसके आधार पर कुछ भी उसको आगे लेके ना जाए। और अनुच्छेद 20-21 निश्चित तौर पे जीवन जीने के अधिकार की बात तो करता है, बट व्यक्तिगत स्वतंत्रता क्या होती है उसके बारे में भी उसको गारंटी ये देता है। और वर्षों से हमने देखा, अभी कुछ जजमेंट्स की बात जो इंदिरा ने की है, इसके साथ में और भी हम देखें तो कहीं ना कहीं सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने टू सम एक्सटेंट इट हैज ट्राइड टू डिमिनिश द लाइन, वो लाइन को खत्म करने की कोशिश की है। जब हम डीपीएसपी, डायरेक्टरी प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसीज की बात करते हैं और उसको कहीं ना कहीं फंडामेंटल राइट्स में लाने की कोशिश की है। आप एनवायरमेंटल जस्टिस की बात कीजिए और आप देखिए कि कैसे अलग अलग स्तर पे दलित समुदाय के साथ में अलग अलग तरीके से उनके सामाजिक आर्थिक अधिकारों की बात कर लीजिए, उनके राजनीतिक नागरिक अधिकारों की बात कर लीजिए, और अब किस हद तक उनके जो पर्यावरण के अधिकार है, उनके जो एनवायरमेंट के अधिकार है, उसको किस तरीके से उनका हनन किया जा रहा है, जो कुछ हद तक कहीं ना कहीं हमारा संविधान इतना ताकतवर है कि उनको स्पष्ट रूप से और भी प्रदान कर सकता है। तो मैं यहाँ पे रुकूंगा। मैं क्लारा और इंदिरा से रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूंगा अगर आप लोग कुछ ऐड करना चाहें, सो दैट आफ्टर दैट वी कैन हैव क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम द फ्लोर। क्लारा और इंदिरा।
Sure. Yeah, I'd just like to add a little here. So thank you again. I don't like to leave on a tone, on a note without hope. because that's the only thing that can keep us going. तो मैं एक बात तो कहूँगी कि हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं. One is to bring that voice to those who can help. मतलब अगर हम चुप बैठेंगे तो उससे तो कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. So this whole thing of being excluded, if one remains excluded, it's very, very difficult. So one thing that is very gratifying is that the ability to bring voice and expression to the courts of the voiceless and those who are invisibilized and otherized and not seen. So that's one I wanted to say. When we talk about dignity, one of the things is also an expectation that you will be heard, an expectation or a confidence that the law will be complied with, an expectation to be seen and not just, you know, not just excluded from the line of vision, so to speak. So I think dignity में ये भी आ जाता है, and also the ease of getting justice. So we have no doubt won many judgments, thankfully, but it's with a lot of struggle and with tenacity. मतलब सालों तक लगे रहते हैं. सो इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू रेप्लिकेट ऑल्सो. जैसे झुग्गियों को तोड़ा गया, ये जो बुलडोज़र की बात हम आज सुनते हैं, बुलडोज़र पॉलिटिक्स, ये 2014 में दिल्ली में ओखला में संजय गांधी झुग्गी क्लस्टर में the bulldozer was brought and overnight 100 people just lost their homes. So not 100 homes, so 700 people were out on the streets. But we've just been at it and at it and at it, and all of them have come back, except unfortunately 2 people who passed away. But the thing is, you really have to keep at it. So the fact that you have to literally beg for justice or struggle or push and push and push and say, yes, look, I do deserve to get justice. That is also an erosion of dignity. But nonetheless, one needs to keep at it. That's one. And the other thing is, cases for the marginalized are usually kept at the bottom of the list. हमने देखा है कि हमारे जो cases हैं, चाहे street vendors के हों, अगर भी टॉप ऑफ द लिस्ट आए तो वो कहेंगे अच्छा आज तो we'll hear this and we'll keep it at the bottom. So it is kept as the 50th or the 60th case. So you're also pushed down the line over there. So I just thought that's also important. It's important for all functionaries to embody the values in the Constitution. So it's not good enough to have a document or just put them in positions, but a lot of sensitization and training so that the Constitution becomes a living document, and all these functionaries, lawmakers, law implementers, and then people जो कानून के रखवाले हैं, the judges, the judiciary, also need to really be sensitized. Today they're so removed from what goes on at the grassroots level. As lawyers, we actually visit the site. So if there is a demolition, we go there. If street vendors have been removed, we go to that market. So we know what's going on as lawyers as well. And we try to, bring the picture to before the person who's deciding. But I find that there is a certain dullness in appreciating these things because they have no clue. There's just a desensitization. So some amount of sensitization is also very, very important to awaken that conscience. Because once you see and once you don't just label and close your eyes, I think a lot can be done. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Clara. So thank you so much again, Naveen, Arvind, and Clara and of course Nazar. Yes.
Thank you very much. Clara, also there is another question for you, Clara, which is, could you please explain what a paralegal is and what it does? आप बता सकते हैं क्या कि पैरालीगल कौन है और वो क्या करते हैं? मे बी आप अपना फाइनल कमेंट्स देते टाइम अगर इसका जवाब दे सकें तो हमारे साथियों के लिए बेहतर होगा. शुक्रिया.
जरूर नवीन. अरविंद और इंदिरा ने काफी अच्छे से कवर किया है सारी चीजें. आई विल जस्ट ऐड दैट जब हम डिग्निटी और एक्सेस टू जस्टिस की बात करते हैं, मुझे लगता है कि हमें इसे डेमोक्रेटाइज करने की जरूरत है. When I say so, I say that we can start from democratizing these terms itself. क्योंकि गांव में अगर आप बात करते हैं न्याय की बात सुनने नहीं मिलती कि न्याय मेरा अधिकार है. अधिकार की बात तो, लेकिन न्याय एज अ buzzword is still missing. And when I say democratizing dignity, मेरा सम्मान, मेरा आत्मसम्मान जो है, it's still missing from the landscape of the development in the grassroots. So we can start from, so there is a lot needed to be done in democratizing these things. Starting itself from the terms, it might be lead to sensitive, creating awareness on it. So that's what I will add only. And Arvind और इंद्रा ने काफी हद तक बाकी चीजें कवर की हैं. What does, and now coming to the question, yeah, what is a paralegal? So paralegals are individuals who are not, doesn't have a degree in law, but they have been, have certain they can't practice, they don't practice law, but they have been certified, they have been educated on certain aspects of law. Here, when I say the paralegal in my context, when I was describing, they have been trained on the aspects of right to justice, like the Domestic Violence Act, and the aspect of rights to women. They have been trained and they have been certified by certain organization. And these are the people in my context, these are the people from the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community, socioeconomically excluded and from socioeconomically marginalized backgrounds. And they have been trained, have been certified, and they have been certified to give support to the families who are socioeconomically marginalized, specifically the women in the rural parts of MP, to support them so that whenever they face any kind of atrocity, so if they are not able to approach if they don't know how to approach the law, they will support them in helping them to know how they can approach the law, how they can have legal support. So that's what it is. I hope I have been able to answer your question.
Yeah, I think you have done justice to the English language. I'll do justice to the Hindi language maybe. So,
I can repeat it in Hindi.
Oh yeah, please. It will be great. It will be great if you can repeat that. Thank you.
So, paralegal जो हैं, paralegal आपके दलित और ट्राइबल कम्युनिटी से कुछ महिलाएं हैं. जिन पैरालीगल के बारे में मैं बात कर रही थी, वो एमपी के एक छोटे से डिस्ट्रिक्ट से आते हैं, जो मोस्टली ट्राइबल डोमिनेटेड डिस्ट्रिक्ट है. और उन्होंने कुछ पूरा उनकी कानून की डिग्री तो नहीं है उन लोग के पास, लेकिन उन्होंने कानून के ऊपर महिलाओं के जो अधिकार हैं उसको प्रोटेक्ट, सेफ गार्ड करने के लिए जो कानून होता है उनके ऊपर उन्हें ट्रेन किया गया है. ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के जरिए उन्हें सर्टिफाई किया गया है ताकि वो जो लीगल सपोर्ट है वो दे पाए गांव की महिलाओं को, खास करके आपके शेड्यूल कास्ट और शेड्यूल ट्राइब की महिलाएं जो कि गरीब तबके से आते हैं, उनको सपोर्ट दे पाए. ताकि महिलाएं, कई बार ऐसा होता है कि पुलिस को, आज के दिन में भी पुलिस को अप्रोच करना, लीगल हेल्प को अप्रोच करना इज अ टैब in rural part as well in urban part. I won't say that it's not in urban part as well. लेकिन कैसे हम उसके महिलाओं के अधिकार, इन सब के बारे में अवेयरनेस भी फैला पाए, वो महिलाएं उसके ऊपर काम करती है. एट द सेम टाइम वो उन्हें मदद करती हैं कि अगर उनका कोई भी अधिकार लंघन हुआ है तो किस तरीके से उनको वो अधिकार को वो एक्सेस करने के लिए उन्हें सपोर्ट प्रोवाइड करना है. यस,
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया क्लारा. आई थिंक ये काफी हद तक चीजें क्लियर कर रहा है. और इन सारी चीजों को मैं अगर जोड़ के कहना चाहूँ तो आप पैरालीगल्स को एक तरीके से ब्रिज जो है मान सकते हैं. और उस ब्रिज को ही कुछ हद तक जो है आप देख सकते हैं कि कैसे वो समाज और कानून के बीच में एक ब्रिज का काम करते हैं. और जिसके माध्यम से जो है वो कुछ हद तक वो आगे आने की कोशिश करते हैं. और समाज में, क्योंकि कई बार ऐसा होता है हम एज अ लॉयर जो है समाज तक नहीं पहुंच पाते हैं. जैसे मैं खुद का एक्सपीरियंस बता देता हूँ कि मैं राष्ट्रीय विधि विश्वविद्यालय से पढ़ के आया, उसके बाद वहां से एलएलएम किया. जैसे अरविंद वेरी स्पेसिफिकली मेंशन दैट वी डिडंट इवन टॉक अबाउट प्रीएम्बल इन आवर नेशनल लॉ स्कूल, व्हिच वाज अ वेरी embarrassing moment for me because I didn't know what is an SC/ST Act, which is very unfortunate being a Dalit. And this happened when I actually did my education from National Law School. और उसके बाद भी अगर मुझे नहीं समझ में आया कि preamble क्या होता है और SC/ST Act क्या होती है, which was a shame to some extent. I'll say it's a shame because you're not being taught about Dalit and Adivasi rights. You're not being talked about told about gender justice. You're not being told about rights of a child. And that's how you try to keep the new generation away from the whole aspect of justice for the marginalized class. And then we move towards another aspect wherein Indra very beautifully mentioned that there is another line of discrimination attached. एक और नई लाइन जुड़ी हुई है जो स्पष्ट रूप से झुग्गियों की बात करती है, जो अब ये मेरे लिए एक और नई चीज थी सीखने के लिए जब मैं आया कि ओ यहाँ पे भी अधिकारों का उल्लंघन हो रहा है. So that then the whole aspect of urban justice comes in, and how powerfully this has impacted. And the whole aspect when we talk about is to some extent revolving around the concept of dignity. It revolves around the concept of equality. It revolves to some extent around the concept of untouchability. And maybe that was the need why Dr. Ambedkar and our constitution makers, and I would not only Dr. Ambedkar, I would also like to acknowledge the efforts of all the women who had kind of ensured that there is a very strong constitution within our own hands, which has given us power now at this point of time, जो हमें ताकत दे रहा है. So ये है, और इसी यही चीज समझ के बाद जो पैरालीगल्स होते हैं जो जमीनी स्तर पे जुड़े हैं, और जैसे मैं एक लॉयर होकर मुझे नहीं पता था कि जमीनी मुद्दे क्या हैं, तो वो पैरालीगल उन्होंने मुझे जोड़कर समाज से जोड़कर काम करने की एक मदद करने की कोशिश की, जिससे मैं भी उनके साथ काम कर पाया, बहुत कुछ सीख पाया, और वो मेरे साथ में काफी हद तक काफी चीजें लॉ को लेकर जानकारी में उनको दे पाया. तो वो पैरालीगल होते हैं, और मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगा एक्सेस टू जस्टिस की जो पूरी लड़ाई है उसका जो मेन पिलर है वो पैरालीगल्स है. These are neither lawyers, neither I would say academicians, neither the constitution maker, neither the legislature maker. They are the paralegals which are connecting us to the society directly. That's why they are powerful. It would be good कि next session में हम Clara, Indra and Arvind, we can have more discussion on the concept of paralegal and why is it more important to understand कि paralegal क्यों जरूरी है. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया साथियों का. तो क्विकली हम नेक्स्ट 10 मिनट्स में विल ट्राई टू वाइंड अप, हम खत्म करने की कोशिश करेंगे. Arvind, is it possible for you to respond to one questions which has been raised by Christiana? If you can go through quickly. She has mentioned that with the current political scenario, आज के राजनीतिक प्रभाव में where social consciousness is probably at its lowest, जहाँ पे सामाजिक सोच, सामाजिक न्यायता एक स्तर तक गिर चुकी है, और जो एट्रोसिटीज हैं, जो हिंसाएं हैं, वो वंचितों के खिलाफ निरंतर रूप से बढ़ती चली जा रही हैं. तो वहां पे हमारे एक्शन कौन कौन से हो सकते हैं? What are the doable actions? So maybe quickly, Arvind, if we can have something from your side. Thank you.
Maybe a simple enough answer. You go back to Baba Saheb's words. Educate, organize, agitate is the three frameworks he gave for all of us to take forward. And maybe think a little more on what you mean when you say educate, organize, and agitate. If you take that as a frame, right? What I think Christina indicated is the educate component is when you feel in some sense isolated. The idea that there must be a certain knowledge, but as Naveen, you were just indicating, or where do we draw our strength from? One source, again, it's not the only source, one source where we draw our strength from is the fact that the Constitution recognizes that we're all equal to each other. The Constitution recognizes that we all have the right to dignity. The Constitution recognizes that for the society to function, we need to embody the principle of fraternity. We need to treat the other person as a human being, and we need to interact with the other person as a full equal being. And we need to build a sense of a community, a sense of a connection between him and me and her and me, etc. Right? And that's a starting point. That's the education component. The organized component, I think, is equally important, right? And again, this links up to when I think the last part of Christina's comment is, what can I do other than being a social action warrior? So sorry, social media warrior. The important point there is you need to break that sense of isolation. Part of the place where the sense of despair comes in when you feel you're alone and you can't do anything to change the world. Again, what Indra has indicated very powerfully, right? I mean, she's doing grassroots level, Clara's doing work at the grassroots level. You join the range of groups doing this kind of work. Join with people, work with people, and suddenly you'll see that sense of despair going away because you feel there's strength in a collective sense, strength in people coming together. And the point to note is also in the very difficult circumstances, there are people doing very incredible work in all parts of the country. There's again a very marvelous philosopher who I'm very fascinated by called Hannah Arendt. And she puts it this way, right? And I'll just quote what she says. She says that even in the darkest of times, we have the right to expect some illumination. And sometimes that illumination may come not from concepts and theories, but from the lives of some people who are not almost all circumstances will kindle a light. Right? So you just look around you, the people doing incredible work in very difficult circumstances. Say, I want to join you, I want to work with you. And that's the way in which social change, social transformation begins by breaking fundamentally the sense of isolation, the sense of fear, and the sense of despair that nothing can change, right? Because there are people who believe it can change. You join with people like that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, अरविंद। आई थिंक बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से अरविंद ने बताया है कि जब हम बाबा साहब की बात करते हैं तो आप शिक्षित बनो, आप संगठित करो, आप संघर्ष करो, आप बी एजुकेटेड, एजिटेट एंड ऑर्गेनाइज। सो कुछ हद तक अरविंद ने अपनी बातों को बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से यहाँ पे बताया है कि क्यों हमें जानकारी लेने की जरूरत है, क्यों हमें शिक्षा लेने की जरूरत है, क्यों उसके बाद अपने आसपास लोगों को समझने की एक जरूरत पड़ती है, और क्यों हमें बाद में कहीं हद तक साथ आने के बाद संघर्ष करने की जरूरत है। अगर इन 3 स्टेप्स को हम अकॉर्डिंगली साथ लेके जाते हैं तो बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से हम खुद उन चीजों को अपने दिमाग में आगे लेके जा सकते हैं, और साथ होना इटसेल्फ इज अ वेरी बिग, बहुत बड़ी चीज है। सो दैट्स व्हाट इज अरविंद इज ट्राइंग टू एम्फसाइज अपॉन, एडिंग टू व्हाट अंबेडकर सेड अबाउट बीइंग एजुकेटेड, agitate and organize, and that's what gives us the strength। वो हमें ताकत कुछ हद तक देता है। क्विकली हम लास्ट के 2 सवाल ले सकते हैं अगर हमारे पास में है। मैं ऑल्सो रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा इंदिरा और क्लारा जी को, whenever you think you want to pitch in, please pitch in, it will be good to have your inputs also। सुहास has raised his hand, सुहास जी ने अपना हाथ उठाया। सुहास जी आप प्लीज बोल सकते हैं।
So, on this, I just like to add one thing here, कि
Please.
when you can do something about it, however small it is, you know, that helplessness goes away. The minute you take action when there is injustice, उससे बहुत बड़ा फर्क पड़ता है। I've seen that, you know, and I'm so thankful that you put it like that, you know, when you organize people and when they feel they're empowered, you're not alone any longer, but also you can do something about it। और एक छोटा सा भी चीज़ किया जाए उसके बाद वो कॉन्फिडेंस आ जाता है। So very often the Jhuggi dwellers I work with, the street vendors and so on, they don't wait for me. I tell them, आप ये कीजिए, you write a letter. So they go and meet the chief minister and get reliefs। So it's like, you know, this whole thing about give a man a fish or give a person a fish, to be gender neutral, versus teach them fishing. It's a whole livelihood। तो it is empowerment, you can take care of yourself। मैं बस ये थोड़ा सा बोलना चाहती थी इसमें। थैंक्स।
इंदिरा जी, इस पावरफुल वॉइस में एक बार हिंदी में आप बोल दीजिए, बिकॉज मैं बोलूंगा तो उतना इम्पैक्ट नहीं पड़ेगा, तो जो आपने बोला उसको रिपीट कर दीजिए। थैंक यू।
हाँ, थैंक यू। तो कई बार क्या होता है कि जब हमें लगता है हम लाचार, एक लाचारीपन का महसूस, सॉरी मेरी हिंदी इतनी स्ट्रांग नहीं है, बट जब हम लाचार, अपने आप को लाचार महसूस करते हैं, तो हम उम्मीद खो जाते हैं। लेकिन अगर एक छोटा सा भी कदम उठाकर कुछ एक्शन लेते हैं तो पूरा, हमारे लिए पूरी दुनिया बदल जाती है। एक तो जब हम एक दूसरे के साथ हैं तो हमें लगता है, एक वो अकेलापन चला जाता है, वो जो हम महसूस करते हैं कि हम अकेले हैं बिल्कुल। पर दूसरा है जब हम कदम लेते हैं और एक छोटी सी भी चीज़ हासिल कर पाते हैं अपने लिए, तो फिर पूरी दुनिया बदल जाती है और उसके बाद हम खुद अपने आप एक्शन ले पाते हैं। तो हम कई बार जब मैं अपने क्लाइंट्स के साथ काम करती हूँ, हम सिर्फ लॉयर के ज़रिए ऐसे नहीं, तो आई एम ऑल्सो देयर फ्रेंड। हम कम से कम मिलते हैं, कई बार दिवाली के टाइम में एक दूसरे के साथ चाय भी पीते हैं, दैट आई एम एडिंग ऑफ कोर्स राइट नाउ, बट वो करते हैं। बट उसमें ये भी है कि मतलब हम ये भी कहते हैं कि आप सिर्फ कानून का पहचान नहीं, बट आप कानून को खुद आप उसका उपयोग करके यू कैन गेट हेल्प फॉर योरसेल्फ। तो ये एक है कि अगर किसी को हम एक मछली दें या एक चीज़ कुछ भी दें तो उनका उस टाइम, या एक मान लीजिए एक टाइम के लिए खाना दें तो वो खाना खा पाते हैं, लेकिन एक जीविका उनके सामने प्रस्तुत करेंगे तो सारी ज़िंदगी बदल जाती है। यू कैन टेक एक्शन ऑन योर ओन। तो ये हमारे जैसे झुग्गी वाले जो रहते हैं, जो क्लाइंट्स हैं, अगर कुछ भी हो जाता है, अब कोई भी उनके राइट्स का उल्लंघन करने की कोशिश करते हैं, दे डायरेक्टली वो खुद चीफ मिनिस्टर के पास चले जाते हैं और कहते हैं ये आप क्या कर रहे हैं, और वो अपने आप को संभाल पाते हैं। तो आई जस्ट थॉट आई से
बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया इंदिरा जी। मुझे लगता है इंदिरा जी कुछ हद तक कैपेसिटेशन की बात कर रही हैं, कुछ हद तक क्षमता निर्माण की बात कर रही हैं, जो ये जरूरी नहीं है कि हम ही हमेशा किसी की मदद करने के लिए आगे जाएं। बेहतर है कि आप कुछ ऐसे तरीकों को तैयार करें जिसके माध्यम से आप खुद अपने इस ज्ञान को, अपने तरीकों को, अपने पर्सपेक्टिव को, अपने नजरिए को आगे दे सकें, जिससे पूरा का पूरा समुदाय खुद अपनी लड़ाई को आगे ले जा सके। और वो प्रोसेस की इंदिरा जी बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से उसको सामने रख रही हैं। मैं क्विकली सुहास जी से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, अगर आपके सवाल हैं तो आप सवाल आगे रख दीजिए। जी सुहास जी।
धन्यवाद सभी पैनलिस्ट को और आपको बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। मैंने सुझाव चैट में रखा था। मुझे मैं NAPM से जुड़ी हूँ और विशेषतः नर्मदा घाटी में काफी समय बिताया है। अभी उम्र के वजह से वहां नहीं जाती। तो और बम्बई के झुग्गी झोपड़ी में भी जो काम है हमारे साथियों का, तो एक्टिविस्ट इंदिरा जी जैसा बोल रही वैसा कर तो लेते हैं, लेकिन मुझे ये कंसेप्ट अच्छा लगा कि जो पैरामेडिकल का एक सर्टिफिकेशन, पैरालीगल का सर्टिफिकेशन टाइप यदि हम कुछ वर्कशॉप्स डिजाइन कर सके कुछ, तो बहुत बढ़िया होगा। तो मेरी विनती होगी कि मीरा के साथ हम इंटरेक्ट करके कुछ पॉकेट्स बोल सकते हैं कि जहाँ विशेष इसकी जरूरत है, और टू बिगिन विथ एटलीस्ट ऑनलाइन, और फिर हो सके तो ऑफलाइन भी वर्कशॉप जैसा यदि हम करें हमारे जहाँ जहाँ पे संघर्ष है वहाँ के साथियों के लिए, क्योंकि ये दिक्कत उनको बहुत महसूस होती है। जहाँ स्ट्रगल नया शुरू होता वहाँ पे ये बहुत जरूरत होती है। और दूसरी एक बात मैं शेयर करना चाहूंगी कि जैसे पूना में सत्यरंजन साठे थे ILS लॉ कॉलेज के, और उनकी और एक साथी जया सागड़े, उन लोगों ने एक प्रोग्राम चलाया था, जया जी और कुछ और साथी जजेस और इस प्रकार के जो लीगल सिस्टम वाले लोग हैं उनको जेंडर जस्टिस पे कुछ सेंसिटाइजिंग प्रोग्राम्स लेते थे। तो उस प्रकार का भी यदि नजर के थ्रू हम कर सके, मे नॉट बी टू जजेस बट एटलीस्ट टू द लॉयर्स एट लार्ज, जहाँ जहाँ पे हमारे स्ट्रगल से वो इलाके में, जैसा बम्बई में हमें काफी अच्छा सपोर्ट मिल जाता है, दिल्ली में मिल जाता है, लेकिन जो छोटे प्लेसेस है, छोटी सिटीज है, वहां पे अभी बहुत प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही। तो वहां के लिए हम क्या ऐसा सोच सकते हैं? विल प्लान इट आउट लेटर विथ मीरा इंटरेक्टिंग विथ यू ऑल। थैंक यू।
तो आई थिंक दिस इज ब्रिलियंट। और मतलब बहुत ही लाइन से हम वे फॉरवर्ड की बात हमने की नहीं थी, बट वो होता चला जा रहा है, विच इज़ वेरी ब्यूटीफुल अबाउट दिस सेशन। और हम तरीके बताते जा रहे हैं, और मैं बहुत ही, मुझे लगता है काफी हद तक सहमत हूँ, और ये हम लोगों के दिमाग में भी है कि कैसे हम जो है इस चर्चा को आगे ले जाकर एक वर्कशॉप फॉर्म में, कैपेसिटेशन की बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग, कॉम्पिटेंसी की बात कर रहे हैं, बार बार क्षमता निर्माण की बात कर रहे हैं, तो वो शायद इन 1-1.5 घंटे के सेशन से कुछ नहीं होगा। दे वोंट बी much through these 1.5 hour of sessions. We need to spend more time, dedicated time, space, be it online or offline. To some extent, I'll prefer offlines, क्योंकि वो एक तरीके से बेहतर कम्युनिकेशन करने में मदद करता है, बट जहाँ पॉसिबिलिटी नहीं है। बट हाँ, हमें ज़रूरत है पैरामेडिकल और पैरालीगल, जिस चीज़ के बारे में क्लारा बात कर रही थी उस पर कैपेसिटेशन को लेकर मैं सहमत हूँ इस चीज़ से, और आशा करता हूँ कि नज़र के साथी भी हमारे इस पे आगे विचार कर सकते हैं। और इधर मीरा जी मुझे नहीं शायद पता, शायद से आज शायद नहीं जुड़ पाए, बट उस पे हम आगे उसको चर्चा करके किसी तरीके से वी कैन surely take it forward. Thank you, thank you. Shrikant, you were raising your hand. आप हाथ उठा रहे थे. If you want to speak, आप बोल सकते हैं.
Yeah. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
जी जी बोलिए बोलिए श्रीकांत.
So first of all, thank you, Clara and Arvind, for uh, highly focusing on the concept of dignity. So my question is around, so when we visualizing the concept or value dignity, so what are the means we must look at critically? Because for a marginalized community, now land is a bigger question for the mobility. But along with that, as Baba Sahib also looked education as a way of empowerment. But in current whole education ecosystem, how do we see education as a process of where we accomplish the concept of dignity, or at least on work on that journey? So if you could add anything around this?
ठीक है, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. So Arvind, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. So thanks for the question. And how do you take forward the idea of dignity in the contemporary context? That the way I understood it is the question. And one way maybe to also understand, the different dimensions of dignity, right? I mean, obviously, dignity has many dimensions. As rightly indicated, dignity is connected in some sense to the question of land. In other sense, it's connected to the entire question of self-esteem and the entire question of humiliation. How do you, in a sense, promote a culture of treating the other person as a human being? And that's really the core question we have when it comes to dignity. And again, if we go, since the Najar is a legal forum, we go through the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court, right? The entire question of dignity enters Indian constitutional law discourse to the entire prisoners' rights discourse, right? Where you have the entire question of, prisoners. When you enter the prison, your right to mobility is taken away, but your right to dignity remains. Your right to dignity cannot be taken away. Look at the entire question of the arbitration of the Supreme Court in Navtej Johar, right? Their entire argument is that your right to make a choice about the sexual orientation or gender identity is again a part of your right to dignity. So part of the struggle, of course, is again going back to the Baba Sahib invocation is this, right? I mean, it's not all the question of the state. Part of the problem, a large part of the problem, also lies in our society, lies in the fact that we don't treat each other as human beings. And again, going back to Baba Sahib's notion, which we didn't mention, is his invocation of the idea of constitutional morality. The way he puts it is this, right? So he says democracy in India is a top dressing on a soil which is essentially undemocratic. Constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. Our people, we have to learn it and we have to cultivate it. So I think your job, our job, all of our job is really how do you cultivate a sense of constitutional morality? How do you take forward the values of the Indian Constitution and make it a part of our lived reality where people feel that is an important value in the way we interact with each other, right? So it's a challenging question and a challenging task, and there are a range of ways to do it. One of it is, of course, taking forward again, as Naveen indicated, taking forward the notion of constitutional values. How to take forward constitutional values in an educational sense, in a literacy sense, in a constitutional culture sense. That's one part of it. How do you think of culture which can take forward these notions? How do you think of these values in our own local traditions and as well? Give you one last example, end with that. In Karnataka, we have a very, very important 12th century saint called Basavanna, right? And he has this very beautiful poem, which I'm going to narrate in English, which goes something like this. He says, "The rich will build temples for you. What shall I, a poor man, do? My legs are pillars, my body a shrine, my head a golden cupola. Listen, O Lord of the meeting rivers. The standing ever shall fall, the moving ever shall stay." So to our Prime Minister, the response is really this. You can build every temple that you want. End of the day, the temple is really within you. Right? And the question is, how do we treat every human being as somebody in whom a temple resides? That's the challenge we have coming from Baba Sahib.
Brilliant. Thank you थैंक यू अरविंद. सो आई मीन द होल आइडिया जिस तरह अरविंद बात कर रहे हैं वो कह रहे हैं कि श्रीकांत ने सवाल रखा था कि क्यों जो है डिग्निटी के इर्द गिर्द जब हम बात करते हैं जमीन के अधिकार की और कहीं ना कहीं जब हम दलित आदिवासी अधिकारों की बात करते हैं तो क्या हम और कैसे उसको आगे लेके जाना चाहेंगे, जिसको बहुत ही खूबसूरती से मुझे लगता है अरविंद ने बात की है, स्पष्ट रूप से बोला भी है कि क्यों हमें खुद ही कल्टीवेट करना पड़ेगा संवैधानिक नैतिकता को हमारे दिमाग में, क्यों हमें जरूरत है उसको हमें खुद बढ़ाना पड़ेगा और उसको आगे लेके जाना पड़ेगा. भले वो जैसा उससे पहले भी बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से अरविंद ने बोला था कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की जो बात बार बार कर रहे हैं, क्या डिफरेंस है नियम और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन वैल्यूज में, और क्यों उसको हमें बेहतर रूप से समझने की कोशिश है, उसको बहुत ही स्पष्ट रूप से अरविंद बताते हुए हमारे सामने बात को रखना चाह रहे हैं. तो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया फिर, थैंक यू अरविंद. कोई और साथी जो इस पे बात रखना चाहें आखिरी, और नहीं तो हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं. और मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा क्लारा से if she wants to add anything and then we kind of finish it. Thank you.
Yeah. I will add to Arvind actually that dignity. I think dignity, we need to integrate dignity into everything. It's not about land. We are also about dignity, about our economic choices, dignity in work also. When we see in economic forces, when we are talking about a significant section of our society working as are into the cleaning the toilets and cleaning our drainage system. And we need to ensure dignity to them as well. But they are working in that condition, and what they are doing is something which is not acceptable today as per the constitution, but they are doing it. So dignity isn't something which we can assure in isolation. When we talk about dignity, when we are talking about designing any program or designing any law, we need to ensure it in everything, whether in dignity in economic opportunities we are providing, whether dignity in social opportunities we are providing to the individual. In education, if you are specifically saying in education, I will say that in education, what I have observed in the Indian paradigm of education, that when we talk about equality and dignity, we only teach our students that our constitution is like, I'm talking about the primary, secondary education, the higher education. It's not. We are showing them that utopian world, that Indian constitution says that no one's right should be denied. But it never put that idea by challenging the current reality of the village, that how dignity has been compromised and why these rights have been given to an individual. So I think it doesn't happen, the question of dignity and about dignity, as I said before, it should be democratized. When I say about democratize, I mean that it needs to be addressed in every approach of ours, whether it's education, whether it's economic approach of it. So I think that's how we can approach dignity itself. We can approach we can make a better, just and equitable society. We can approach. Yeah. That's
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया और थैंक यू फॉर इसको और मैं फाइनली मुझे लगता है कि अंत में आ गया और टाइम पे है, थोड़ा सा नो डाउट लेट हुआ है, बट बेहतर चीजें बाहर निकल के आई हैं. एंड एज वी काइंड ऑफ ड्रॉ दिस सेशन टू अ क्लोज, we need to reflect upon profound ideas of our own constitution, Indian constitution, and to some extent the way Arvind has beautifully put in the whole aspect of, how Dr. Ambedkar has to some extent described the difference between rules and principles, and why there is an importance of access to justice in our society, and the way we talked about social justice, which enshrines in this text itself, which talks about fundamental rights, which talks about, ensuring access to justice to every level. When Indira brings up the aspect of jhoki, chhopdi and rickshaw pullers, how they are being impacted and they are being kind of outcasted extensively, telling them, okay, fine, you don't exist, you are encroaching, you don't exist. And finally, the whole aspect of why access to justice is very important for women, from a Dalit community, from a Adivasi community, and of course for our women herself altogether. If we don't even talk about Dalit and Adivasi community, what she faces everywhere, specifically in terms of access to justice. And And of course, we all know it's a cornerstone of fair and equitable justice. So, regardless of the circumstances, everybody to seek redressal, has a right to seek redressal, to grievances, to be voice to be heard. Article 32 is actually, present, which gives power to our whole journey. And of course, in this whole endeavor, let's not only talk about Dr. Ambedkar. Let's not only talk about those who were part of the constitutional drafting committee. Let's talk about everyone who was part of the struggle. Let's talk about every member who was from the marginalized community. And of course, also a few people who were not from the marginalized community, but had that perspective, who had fought well, being from a dominant caste. Also, and also understanding and acknowledging the fact that, okay, they have also taken some space. I was just talking to one of my colleague a day before, wherein she specifically mentioned that we have taken a lot of space, and that was such a powerful word. I mean, I was like, okay, fine. They have started acknowledging, and that to some extent embarks, our journey. And let us be more committed to uphold constitutional values and principles. And कुछ हद तक हमें भी स्वीकार करना चाहिए कि न्याय जो है सार्वभौमिक है। उसके आदर्श पे, जो संवैधानिक आदर्श है, उसके समाज में कई लोगों का जिस तरीके से उत्पीड़न होता आया, उस संविधान ने हमें ताकत दी है, चाहे वो आर्थिक असमानता हो, चाहे वो सामाजिक पूर्वाग्रह हो, और जो बाइसनेस ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग है सोसाइटी में, और जो बाधाएं आती आई हैं, खासतौर पे जो हाशिए पे समुदाय हैं, और कुछ हद तक जो बाबा साहब ने हमें ताकत दी है इससे लड़ने के लिए, हम आशा करते हैं उसको आगे और बेहतर रूप से लेके जाएंगे, और ये लड़ाई जारी रहेगी। सभी साथियों को बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। जिंदाबाद, जय भीम। थैंक यू, थैंक यू।
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naveen. Thank you. I just want to, if I may just add one more thing, I just want to say that dignity is also about practicing inclusiveness at every stage and practicing non-discrimination with all that